Okay, I had to check something, and it turns out this is the one I'm looking for. This essentially is part 1 of... What was it called again? Shoot. Hang on. This 7th time loop. The villainess enjoys a carefree life married to her worst enemy. Yeah, odd kind of title, but it kind of appealed to me, and I was like, I want to try this. But obviously, you know, with any kind of light novel that I want to do a reading on it. Okay. Chapter 1. Rishi Irmgard Weitzner. That's an odd woman. Or odd name! I guess it kind of could be like German or something like that, it seems like. I don't know. You are a vile woman, a truly malicious creature unworthy of the Crown Prince. As of this instant, our engagement is off. Why are you referring to yourself in the third person? Unworthy of the Crown Prince. Our engagement. So, what? As you wish, Your Highness. Huh? Yeah, why are you throwing yourself in the third person? The prince's declaration echoed throughout the ballroom. Rishi, the duke's daughter, bowed in response, her coral-toned hair swaying gracefully. The assembled guests found themselves captivated by her dignified beauty. Despite having just witnessed a broken engagement, they couldn't bring themselves to pity her. Slowly, Rishi, whatever, lifted her head and fixed the prince with a pale emerald gaze. It caught him off guard, but he quickly recovered. Didn't you hear what I just said? I'm calling off our engagement. Doesn't that trouble you? Not really. Rishi already knew what happened next. False accusations, exile, and her family severing all ties and leaving her to survive on her own. She turned from the prince. There was no point wasting any time. This is my 7th loop, after all. Rishi had done this all before. The next few hours will be busy. I must hurry and retrieve my things before I'm barred from the family estate. I don't want this to be one of the times I'm too slow, and I have to start my new life with nothing. Rishi, halt and hear me. I have spent the past week perfecting my recitation of your crimes. I should take more than dresses this time. There's plenty of things I could use out in the world. What trade should I take up? In my first life I was a merchant. In my second, an apothecary. I've got a few more I want to try out. If time's just going to keep resetting, I wish I could start at an earlier point. I need more time to prepare. Wait, Rishi. What the fuck? The Crown Prince was on the verge of tears. Why? Just because you snubbed him and keeping him from accusing you? And the spectators struggled to suppress their snickers. I don't blame her. A thought occurred to Rishi, and she stopped. She then turned, her eyes gleaming beneath long lashes to stare down her ex-fiancé. Ah, Your Highness, I almost forgot. You tell me, the prince fumed. Let me guess, you are hurt beyond measure and yet love me still, correct? No. As if. Rishi was grateful to be granted her freedom. In fact, she was smiling as she said, I hope you and Lady Mary are happy together. What? May we both lead fulfilling lives. Farewell. Rishi lifted the skirt of her evening gown and turned on her heel, departing as briskly as she could. Hey, how do you know about Mary? I haven't told you. I love her. The prince was shouting something behind her, but she paid him no mind. She had things to do. During her first loop, the prince's accusations had shocked her to the core, and she, foolishly so, had attempted to defend herself. Now she knew better than to expect the prince to behave reasonably. How will life unfold this time? I'm excited to find out. Rishi fixed her mind on the future. This is my 7th do-over. I've led happy and carefree lives before, but this time, I swear I'll live a long, happy, and carefree life. In other words, she needed to avoid getting killed. At any cost. In the first loop, with her engagement broken and her reputation in tatters, Rishi roamed with nothing but the clothes on her back. Fortunately, she met a merchant caravan willing to buy her jewelry. Finding them a good-natured band, she hitched a ride to a neighboring country. From the merchant caravan, she learned a trade, studying how to procure stock and balance ledgers. Eventually, she set out on her own to travel the world. Her upbringing as a daughter of the nobility meant that even at 15 years old, Rishi possessed a keen sense for beauty. She collected things that caught her eye and sold them to whoever found delight in her wares. Before she realized it, she had become a major vendor, employing a full staff. She had even done business with the king of a desert nation and the prince of a frozen country up north. She traveled to many distant places, realizing a dream born from her cosseted former life spent doing nothing but preparing to be a queen. 5 years passed, and just as she had only one country left to visit, Rishi fell victim to the war sweeping across the continent. The next thing she knew, she was 15 years old again, and back at that party, with the prince poised to make his pronouncement. We already read this, guys. Naturally, she didn't understand what was going on at first. She looked around. Everything was the same. She stood in the same place, wearing the same dress and draped in the same jewelry she'd sold to the caravan. What was it, a dream? Or was everything that happened up until then the dream? In her confusion, all she could do was stare. Riche hurried out of the barroom, the impending threat of exile hanging over her, and the princess's entreaties to halt ringing in her ears. This is perfect. Now I can get it right. I'll grab everything valuable from my room. Riche had enjoyed her life as a merchant, but she had always felt a stirring of regret about this night. If only she'd brought some funds from home, she would have had the capital to establish her business much sooner. Speaking of this regret, always prompted disbelief from her customers, including the king of the desert. What? That's what you'd want to do over? When she arrived back at home on the night of her second life, Riche grabbed her jewelry box and as many of the books her late grandmother had left her as she could carry, then made haste to the forest to meet the caravan. But the stop at her house took time and she missed them completely. In that moment, Riche made a stark realization. Different choices meant different mistakes. Opening one door would close another, and so the easy path to a life in commerce was closed to her. Sure, she could try to build her business from the ground up, but personal connections were almost as essential to being a merchant as business savvy. It just wasn't realistic without a single acquaintance. Sorting through her belongings in resignation, she came across a foreign encyclopedia of herbs among her grandmother's books. Taking it as a sign, Riche sold her jewels elsewhere and used the funds to cross the sea and pursue the study of medicine. Fortunately, Riche retained all her knowledge from her previous life. She remembered that certain expensive herbs could be acquired cheaply in other regions. When word spread of a disaster running rampant in a neighboring country, she recalled that too. This foreknowledge proved invaluable, as did her wide travel and exposure to many different teachers with many different points of view. As such, Riche led a successful life as an apothecary. She saved a feeble prince, synthesized a number of rare medicines with her mercantile knowledge, and thus spent her days in the simple joy of helping those in need. Unfortunately, all the joy in the world couldn't stand up to an epidemic. Thus ended her second, so she died because of a disease. Great. Once again, she found herself in the moment of her broken engagement, the curtain rising on the third loop. Her next 4 lives proceeded much the same way. As a skilled lady's maid, she helped a young noblewoman to a fortuitous marriage. Once, she even disguised herself as a man and became a knight. Every life was worth living, and she enjoyed them all. She enjoyed living, period. There was just one problem. No matter what I do, I die at 20. She enjoyed her lives, but she was not permitted to do so for long. With this time limit always hanging over her, she spent each loop in a state of constant activity. I would love to take it easy for a while, and is a little leisure time too much to ask? Obviously, I don't want to die either. This time I'll make as much money as I can in the first 5 years. Then, when I turn 20, I'll live a life free of worldly cares. I'll do whatever's necessary to stay alive. Her mind made up, Riche began her 7th life in a dead sprint through the palace. Regardless of her future plans, she was in a race against time. She needed to beat the messengers bearing news of her scandal. As she ran, she yanked off her hair ornaments. She planned to sell them and didn't want to risk losing one. Her hair billowed out behind her, falling in loose waves. Suddenly, an idea occurred to her, one she hadn't had in any of her previous 6 lives. Leaving through the palace gardens will be faster. I can climb down a tree from the balcony. Riche had gone to war as a knight in the life just before this one. After the punishing battlefield training, climbing trees was nothing. Seamlessly, she changed direction. She raced for the balcony where she ran into something at full speed. Ugh! Riche let out a very unladylike grunt, staggering a few steps. She looked up to see what she bounced off of. Oh! An exceptionally handsome man stood in her path. He had refined, patrician features and cruel thin lips. He was slender yet powerful, even through his clothes. Riche could tell his body was well conditioned. His jet black hair covered his ears, creeping down to the nape of his neck. The tips of his locks bounced with his movements. They looked to be soft to the touch. From head to toe he was a pleasure to look at, but what held Riche's attention were his eyes. They were long in shape and impossibly blue, but they possessed a blade-sharp intensity. His gaze was clear, beautiful, and cold as ice. His eyelashes cast shadows on his striking face. He was a work of art. Currently, this work of art was staring her down with a look that could kill. He laughed. You barreled right into me. For a moment, I thought I'd been attacked by a wild boar. It was an exceedingly rude thing to say to a stranger, but as luck would have it, this man was not a stranger. At least not to Riche. What are you even doing here? The man went on. The party is in the... Riche interrupted him with a wordless shout of dismay. The man drew back reflexively, reaching for his sword. He composed himself with visible difficulty. Who are you? You look like any noblewoman, but your manner is Emperor Arnold Hine. The man's eyes widened. He didn't mistake her surging contempt. Riche had crossed swords with this man recently. He was the one responsible for ending her 6th life. Oh, great! She knows who this guy is. He must be a guest at the banquet. It makes sense. Arnold Hine was a scion of a military nation not far from Riche's home country of Hermity, the one in which they now stood. Their kingdom, so recently at war, had brokered an ostensible peace, and the two ruling families met from time to time. Crown Prince Dietrich's engagement party would be one such occasion. He'd gathered elites from far and wide to introduce to his beloved Mary. The man eyed Riche with rising curiosity. You know me? This is my first time in Hermity. Uh-oh. Riche pasted on a smile as her mind spun in circles. This man was dangerous. She had to avoid entanglements with him at all costs. 5 years from now, Arnold Hine would invade Hermity. He was an extraordinarily skilled swordsman, and with the powerful military at his back, was destined to conquer kingdom after kingdom. He had done as much in her 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th lives. In her 6th, Riche had faced him in battle herself and died by his hand. We never had a chance. That war was lost before it began. Arnold's brilliance lay not in his swordplay, but in his skill as a tactician. He set countries up for conquest and knocked them down, swallowing them one by one. I know him, but he doesn't know me. We haven't met in this life. I need an excuse fast. Riche curtsied slowly. My name is Riche Erngard Weitzner. We've never been introduced, but I've heard of you. Arnold donned an amused smile. You plant your weight like a trained swordsman. Your center of gravity is perfect. Oh, that's coming up to bite you. You exaggerate, Riche demurred. That was simply a courtesy to an esteemed guest. I must have misheard, but I swear you just called me Emperor just now. Uh-oh. He's not the Emperor yet. Riche froze. My father yet lives, Arnold said. I am simply a crown prince. Why would you call me that? Riche floundered for an answer. Uh-oh. Oh, I like this guy. He's cool. Now, what time is it? 12 minutes. It's 2:30. Oh, I don't want to get off yet. She'd made such a foolish mistake. Arnold's gaze cut right through her. It felt like he'd see through any lie she told right down to her soul. She remembered this from the battlefield. His attention alone felt like a sword thrust. But why even bother to lie? They'll never meet again, so who cared what he thought of her? Sure, she harbored a hard feeling or two over the recent slaying, but there was no point complaining about it to this Arnold. Calling him the Emperor was boorish, but Riche was in the process of being forcibly exiled. Why play at diplomacy? She took a deep breath and bowed low. This was not the courtesy of a noble lady, but of a servant bowing in supplication to her master. My humblest apologies, Your Highness. I was in a rush. Such a rude slip of the tongue. She raised her head. My ex-fiancé just announced our engagement, so I've got a lot on my mind. If you would excuse me. He annulled your engagement. At that, Riche turned and fled. This unexpected run-in with Arnold had taken up valuable time. She threw open the door to the balcony and hiked up her skirts, kicking up her shoes in anticipation of jumping into a tree. Looking down, she realized the ground was far closer than she feared. Excellent. I can just drop into the garden. Arnold, who up until now had been rendered speechless, shook himself out of his fugu, whatever, as Riche clambered over the railing. Hey! Riche's moonlight silver dress formed around her as she leaped. The lawn was soft, but the fall was still far enough to risk injury. Weight evenly distributed on the soles of my feet, rolled to transfer the impact to my shins and thighs, then onto my hips and my back. She landed safely, rolled nimbly in her dress, and popped back up. Her hair was covered in leaves. I need to hurry up. Bracing against a nearby rock, she used her weight to snap the heels off of her shoes. There. That would make running a little easier. Satisfied, she slipped them back on and made haste towards the family estate. Up on the balcony, Crown Prince Arnold of Galkion watched the spectacle play out from beginning to end. He gazed at the girl with the coral hair. Her appearance was that of any young noblewoman, but she moved like a well-trained knight. She lit from the balcony and landed skillfully, showing no signs of distress at her ripped dress or disheveled hair. Instead, she knocked the heels off her shoes and dashed away. Also, she had called him an emperor. Playing it all over again in his head, Arnold broke out into a rare chuckle. As his shoulders quivered with laughter, his attendant approached him from behind. There you are, Your Highness. What are you doing out here? I'm aware you don't desire a wife, but beginning the search would be wise. Your Highness? The attendant's eyes flew wide. His bored and scowling master was laughing. Did something happen? Oliver, ready my coach. Wait, no, that will take too much time. Bring me a horse. At once, Your Highness. Might I ask why? Arnold didn't respond. He just grinned like a hungry wolf catching scent of its prey. Uh-oh. I think you got his attention! And, you really didn't want that attention, considering, who he is. Sorry, hang on. I'm trying to gauge how much I can get done before I have to go in and keep an eye out for the kids, because they get off the bus around 2:45 to 3 o'clock. And like I said, it's 2:33. I don't have much time. Once outside the palace gates, Riche threw herself into the waiting coach, shouting for the driver to make haste. She stopped at a few hundred yards from the manor and bade him farewell. I'm leaving. Thanks for always being such a safe driver, Daniel. The road to the manor was muddy from a morning rain shower. She knew from her second life that the coach would get stuck, resulting in a loss of valuable time. It was better to just get out and run. Despite her last life's physical conditioning, this body had no stamina. She'd need to try to get fitter, faster this time around. Riche reached the end of the road, and her heart promptly sank all the way to her feet. Oh no. The front door was thronged with people, all of them surrounding a carriage bearing the royal family's crest of arms. I need to get out of here. While she stood frozen and in indecision, one of the knights doing crowd control shouted, Your Highness, I have eyes on... run, girl, run! Get out of my way. A familiar voice started a bell. Let me through. Riche, how dare you make me wait this long? Uh-oh. Why did you follow him? Seriously, if you just wanted to break off your engagement and be with another woman, why didn't you just do that and not with the false accusations? You didn't need to do that. I know of the thought... Riche's ex-fiancé, Crown Prince Dietrich, stepped triumphantly forward. I know the thought of hearing your crimes enumerated by the man you love must pain you. But alas, as future king, it is my duty to bring down the hammer of justice upon a villainess such as yourself. I see, I timed it badly, Riche muttered. In fact, this is my worst loop yet. I'd rather be barred from the house than see you again. What are you grumbling about? Dietrich looked Riche up and down. I knew it. You put on a brave face, but I can sense the sorrow in your heart. I beg your pardon? Your heart, the prince repeated. Your heart, it must be absolutely crushed, because I called off our engagement. Riche wasn't sure where he was drawing these conclusions from. Possibly the same place he mined for all his bottomless self-confidence. I can tell you've been wandering aimlessly, distraught, the prince went on. Look at you. Your dress is caked in mud, your shoes are broken, and there are cuts marring your face and arms. What other possible cause could there be than heartbreak? Riche narrowed her eyes. Do you ever stop to think about the words coming out of your mouth? What? His interpretation of events was fanciful to the point of absurdity. I did not dirty my dress or snap my shoes out of heartbreak, because I feel none. You've always been a little slow, so I'll make this clear. I do not have a single shred of fondness for you, or for our broken engagement. What? The prince said. What are you saying? A surrounding crowd began to snicker. Isn't that the crown prince? Didn't Lady Riche just dump him? Ha ha ha! Tables have turned! Wait, but wasn't he trying to dump her? Can't be. Look at her. She doesn't care at all. How dare you nobodies make sport of me, Dietrich screeched. I am your prince. Temper aside, Dietrich was a handsome man. He had azure blue eyes and blonde hair, a prince straight out of a picture book. His looks and place in the succession meant a never-ending swarm of women vying for his affection. He was brought up a pampered princeling, never wanting for anything, and manifested in a pompous manner and an overconfidence in his own ability. Riche had cautioned him about his attitude before, but he never paid her any mind. I'm so glad I don't have to marry him. She wished she could go back and tell the shock-scared girl from her first life not to worry about her shattered engagement. Still, she might as well say it all here and now with the assembled knights and citizens to bear witness. Your Highness, you exist to love and protect your people. It's unbecoming to speak of them in this manner. You're the unbecoming one, the prince snapped. Beg me for forgiveness. I won't. Calling off our betrothal is the best course, and I applaud your Highness for your good sense. Now, even the knights were trembling with suppressed mirth. Dietrich was turning red. Don't laugh at me. Lady Riche came a sweet voice. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Riche fought down a groan. Out of the crowd stood a charming, dainty girl. Her big eyes moist with tears, she took place at... Oh, this is Mary. Dietrich sighed. I do not allow the people I care about to be treated so very ill. Why, Lady Mary, you're here, Riche sighed. How nice. The young Mary scowled through her tears. Hidden behind her skirts... Oh, she wears the pants in the family. Dietrich continued to shout his disapproval. Riche, you've brought my beloved Mary to tears. She's told me everything. How you bullied her, ridiculed her, how you find it amusing to lock her in the classroom overnight. Such a wicked woman could never be queen. None of that's true. Riche glanced at Mary, who averted her gaze a little awkwardly. More importantly, Riche said, have you already brought your concerns to my parents, your Highness? More importantly, I did, if you must know. Your parents are furious. They have vowed to disown you. Ah, then I'm too late. Her parents held their reputation above all else. Risha had little hope of retrieving any of her money or belongings now. Why are you acting so strangely? Dietrich sniffed. Ah, I understand. You're in such shock from this turn of events that... Listen, Dietrich. In her exasperation, Risha dropped his title. I accept your decree. We are no longer engaged. I shall never darken your doors to begin, so relax a little. Huh? What are you saying? Since I was a child, I believed my only value was in our betrothal. Being engaged to the Crown Prince was my whole reason for living. I was wrong about that. Only I determine my value, no one else. That's why I don't care about this. I'm beyond it. Risha made sure to look him directly in the eye as she spoke. You are an unnecessary element in my life. Dietrich staggered back. His legs seemed to go out from under him, and he crumpled. At that, the knights finally let go of their composure, laughing along with the courtiers. Stop, the prince wailed. You are my subjects. This shows such flagrant disrespect. Dietrich, don't pay them any mind, Lady Mary said. Lady Risha, is this cruelty necessary? Perhaps this is a blessing in disguise. Risha's attention moved to Mary, making the girl's slender shoulders jump. She had no reason to worry. Risha didn't bite. I've been wanting the opportunity to speak to you, Lady Mary. You're strong. I admire you very much. What are you talking about? You're a lovely girl who never fails to smile despite your troubles. You don't put up walls around your heart, and you do your utmost to put others at ease. Even now, you bravely stand before me to protect the prince. Mary's eyes were... What? Okay, not yet. Mary's eyes were wide with confusion. Risha picked her words carefully, attempting to diminish the girl's guilty feelings, if only a little. You need to marry the prince for your family's sake, right? How do you... Risha had learned this truth in one of her past lives. Mary was born to a poor family, and she studied like mad to be accepted into the academy to hunt for a husband. She intended to make sure neither she nor her brothers ever went hungry again. She went on. Remember this. You are the one in control of your life. Don't sell it to anyone else. Can you trust a man who so easily discards the woman he's been engaged to since childhood? Do you truly believe he cares for you? Astonishment bloomed across Mary's face. She looked over at Dietrich, who hadn't bothered to stand up. The truth was, within a year, Prince Dietrich would be imprisoned, his title stripped from him. He would plan a mad coup d'etat against the king, attempting to provoke the citizens to war. His plan would be discovered in its early stages, rendering him a laughingstock across the kingdoms. You must shape your future with your own hands. You mustn't entrust your desires to others. My desires? Risha nodded. Mary was looking at her like she was speaking a foreign language. But I'm their eldest sister, her voice quivered. I must endure no matter what, otherwise my brothers will never be happy. And you believe their happiness can only be achieved by sacrificing your own? Mary gasped as she gaped at Risha. You don't need to throw away your own future to protect those you love. Risha told her. No matter what path you choose, never forget that. My future? Mary's voice went ragged like she was barely suppressing a wail of pain. I wish you a life where both you and your family can be happy, Risha said. Mary stood frozen in place, eyes gleaming like precious stones. Risha couldn't help but admire how pretty she was. She truly did wish for her happiness, but right now she needed to take care of herself. Well, Risha suddenly broke into a smile, making Dietrich flinch. I think it's time for me to be on my way. She regretted losing access to her room, but she knew her parents wouldn't let her in. Turning her back to the crowd, Risha contemplated her next move. Wait, Lady Risha, Mary's voice rang out. That's right, you're not going anywhere, Risha. The prince joined her. You won't get away with treating me like trash to relieve your own injured heart. Ugh, enough already, Risha's patience was fraying. I don't have anything else to say to you. Goodbye. Hang on, guys. Okay. Knights, stop her. Reluctantly, the knights moved to tail Risha as she walked briskly back down the path. She sympathized with them, but she wasn't about to let them keep her here. Rounding a corner, she sensed something uncanny. She stopped, the knights quickly catching up with her. My apologies, Lady Risha. If you could please remain for just a... Whoa. Risha grabbed the hilt of the knight's sword. Yanking it from his belt, she spun around and stood at the ready. Metal rang against metal as Risha parried a blow. She glared at her would-be attacker as he stepped out of the shadows. Arnold Hine? Why are you attacking her? Well, what do you know? The man smiling so sweetly while their swords locked was the very man who had ended her life. You do have some skill. Metal screeched and slid before Arnold sheathed his sword. Risha lowered hers. Neither looked away. Why the hell are you here? Demanded one of the knights. Stand down, good sire, Risha said. Your interference will only make this worse. This mostly served to befuddle the knights further. Risha absolutely couldn't allow them to come to blows with the crown prince of a friendly nation. And they couldn't beat him. Not even if they took him all at once. Risha had blocked his blow, but her arm was completely numb. To think he'd be even more powerful in 5 years. He regarded her unabashedly. Risha, was that your name? Where did you learn such swordsmanship? I'm afraid I cannot say. Besides, you were clearly going easy on me. Ha, how you could tell? Arnold's manner was throwing her off. He seemed to be enjoying himself. He's laughing. This monstrous prince is actually laughing. When she had met him in her other life, he was cold and merciless like a genuine monster, and yet here he stood, mellow and smiling. The Emperor Arnold Hine, I knew, was 24 years old, so he's, 19 now? This is so weird. He's grinning like a boy getting into a scrape. That attack had been good-natured as well, almost playful. It had muscle behind it, but certainly not any lethal intent. He just wanted to force Risha to catch the blow. She found it unbelievable that he could exude such an overpowering aura of menace when he was just messing around. While Risha was focused on Arnold, Mary and Dietrich caught up, seemingly recovered. Excuse me, my lord, Mary squeaked. I don't know who you are, but kindly step away from Lady Risha. Yes, do as she says. Who the hell are you anyway? Oh, you idiot. Do you not know who this is? Don't tell me Prince Dietrich doesn't recognize one of his personal guests. Dietrich's interest did not lean towards diplomacy. He likely hadn't bothered to introduce himself to Arnold. Mary, for her part, seemed to grasp that Arnold wasn't ordinary. She stood up to defend Risha despite the tremble in her voice. In a better world, perhaps the two of them could have become friends. Yeah, you probably could have. That's your ex-fiancé? Arnold cocked a brow. He's even worse than I imagined. Pathetic. Ha ha, you got called out. Ha ha. Dietrich flushed. I'll have your head. Dietrich, I beg of you, contain yourself, Risha said, then rounded on Arnold. As for you, your highness, you know who Dietrich is, and you know what speaking carelessly could mean. Are you trying to pick a fight? Whatever do you mean? Arnold's brows lifted high, making him the picture of innocence. Believe me, Lady Risha, every word I speak is chosen with extreme care. Finally realizing who Arnold was, Dietrich paled visibly. Arnold, he's the crown prince of Galkine? Mary yelped. The knight stood down, shamefaced. The gossip-hungry neighbors who'd gathered to witness the scandal play out drew back in fear. He's the demon prince, the one who single-handedly destroyed a whole order of enemy knights. Watch your tongue, fool. Do you want him to do the same to you? The two nations enjoyed peaceful relations, but Arnold remained the dreaded prince, heir to the throne of a former enemy. Current rumor wasn't as widespread as it would be in 5 years, but he was still regarded with distrust. The onlookers stood rooted to the spot, too terrified to flee. Well, this has devolved into a full-fledged disaster. Risha heaved a frustrated sigh. Prince Arnold, to what do we owe this honor? Surely a crown prince would not draw his sword for a mere jest. I'm here on business, Arnold said. But first, I must beg forgiveness for my rudeness. Huh? What do you know? Once he became emperor, he'd gladly behead any subject who so much as dared speak a word against him. I guess at 19 he still knew how to apologize. I wonder what changed since then. If that surprised her, Arnold's next act completely obliterated her sense of reality. With a flourish, he fell to his knees. Huh? Is this actually happening? He was a man destined for an imperial crown, a man who would stand at the head of a military powerhouse and spread his rule across continents. Arnold, known for his frigid pride, knelt to the disgraced daughter of a duke. And not only that, his head was bowed, looking nothing so much as a knight swearing allegiance to his lady. If it were anyone else, it would be a delightful, pious image. Instead, the assembled looked on in terrified awe. Not Risha, though. What are you doing? She hissed. Get up. I'm apologizing for my baseless impertinence. Also, I'm asking you. Uh-oh, here we go, guys. He trailed off to take Risha's hand, tugging her forward so forcefully she staggered. He gazed up at her. Ugh, he's so beautiful. No matter how many times she looked at him, it didn't become any less disarming. Yeah, from the picture I saw, oh yeah, I hope this gets animated a time soon because that would be an awesome romance anime. Please? Whoever studio picks it up? Long eyelashes, arched brows, a noble nose. His bright blue eyes reminded her of the drift eye she'd seen in the Northern Kingdom, gazing out from a ship in one of her past lives. She knew she was dwelling on this two by a time, even as the reality before her sank in. Hang on, what was he saying? Let me try and find the sentence. Okay, here we go. Also, I'm asking you to become my wife. Girl, you just went from getting disengaged to engaged again. To a different person, no less. In the span of not even an hour. She froze, unable to process the words. What? Riche glanced around, desperately searching the faces of the crowd. They all seemed as stunned as she felt. She looked down at Arnold again. Your wife? Yes, that's right. You want me to become your wife? Yes. Riche couldn't speak. This was truly happening. It was real. It clicked into place in her head, and she let out a strangled grunt. What is going on? Why is this happening? You ran into this guy, and it threw everything into chaos. Shock lapped at her, fuzzing at the corners of her vision. He wanted to marry her. Arnold wanted to marry Riche. Her murderer wanted to marry her. Well, your former life anyway, not this one. Why is he doing this? He must have some ulterior motive, a broader goal, but I have to give him an answer. The onlookers were holding their breath as Riche said flatly, Oh, I reject your proposal. Oh dear, is he gonna get mad? Is he gonna pursue her? Oh dear. Arnold said nothing. She had to reject him. She was going to live a long, peaceful, carefree life, damn it, and no one would stop her. And yet, Arnold began to laugh, and the deep, creeping sense of dread inside Riche only grew. Why does he sound so amused by this? He's not going to take no for an answer. He's going to try and woo you. Her previous life was her sixth. Disguised as a man, Riche rose as a warrior of an island country she came upon in her travels. It was a conventional yet charming kingdom formed of red brick. After striking up a friendship with a group of knights who didn't realize she was a woman, Riche followed their advice and joined them. The training was grueling enough to make her wish she was dead. Back when she had lived as a noble, she'd learned how to wield a sword for basic self-defense. But training as a noble lady had in no way prepared her for this. She drilled relentlessly, barely taking the time to sleep, just as she became a full-fledged knight, and Emperor Arnold's forces laid siege to the castle. How could this happen? In her seventh life, Riche wearily sank into her chair. Across from her sat Arnold, his legs crossed and chin propped up on his hand, watching her lazily. What's the matter? He asked. You seem unhappy. You could say that! Even her voice was grumpy. Still, she couldn't very well tell him it was because she bore a grudge from a previous life. After the first time her life rewound to that pivotal moment, she resolved to keep her loops a secret. I had plans for my exile, a brand new life, and now, because of you, my parents are involved. Even the king has heard about it. Oh, I guess they got around, and now they're probably going to make her not reject it. After Riche rejected Arnold, Beatrice immediately cried out, The Crown Prince of Galkian proposed to Riche? His shrieks were loud enough to attract the attention of the master and mistress of the manor. Oh, her parents. When her parents came out, Riche had protested, I'm not going to marry him. I'm leaving the country just as Beatrice commanded. No one listened. Their faces just paled with nervous confusion. Just then, a glittering coach arrived. Half stuck in the mud, the man inside it was forced to trudge over the swampy ground, and so the king of Hermity himself arrived, staggering and dirt-stained. He grabbed hold of his son's collar, pushing him into a low bow. Then he turned to Prince Arnold and said rather loudly, Your Highness, allow me to apologize for my son's foolishness. You were an esteemed guest all the way from Galkine. It is unthinkable he would not offer you the courtesy you are due. You're hurting me, father, my back. Well, you did this to yourself, man! The king then turned to Riche. My lady, allow me to sincerely apologize as both a king and a father. My son's behavior towards you has been utterly disgraceful. I beg you to please give Prince Arnold's proposal due consideration, not only for your own sake, but for the sake of your country. The king bowed to her as deeply as his son had to Arnold, and her parents joined him. Riche felt dizzy at the sight of this abject debasement in the presence of citizens. Arnold, who had been watching the proceedings with a detached amusement, sobered and stepped toward the king. Your Majesty, please rise. Without the smirk, Arnold's face immediately reverted to its cold mask. The king didn't move. Maybe something in Arnold's voice kept him frozen. Such a trifle won't cause discord between our kingdoms, he went on. However, I would beg a little time to speak with Lady Riche. Later, Risha would learn that Arnold's attendant had spoken to the king's own gentleman, certain that his words would reach their target. My master took such trouble to attend these festivities, and this is the welcome he's offered? I wonder what would the emperor think when he learns of his son's slighting at your nation's hands. Ooh, yeah. If you would, Lady Risha, the plump king looked to be on the verge of tears. Risha had no obligation to accept and no desire to spend a moment longer in this country than was absolutely necessary. But acquiescence seemed the fastest way to move things along. As her mind whirled, Arnold leaned in to whisper, "If you refuse to hear my suit, you won't deter me. I'll simply move on to Plan B." What's Plan B? Is he gonna pursue her? Like, seduce her? Uh-oh, that's gonna be funny to read. And that was how she found herself in one of the palace's parlors, here to just talk to Prince Arnold. The ball guests were all gone. It was just the two of them. "I want to know what you're planning," Risha said flatly. "Planning? Me? By asking me to marry you. You don't know me. A proposal like this wouldn't come out of the blue. This man was destined to become an aggressive warmonger over the next 5 years. He wouldn't do anything without a dozen motives." Prince Arnold just smiled. "I have no plans. I'm simply enamored with you." Enamored? That was the last thing she expected him to say. Asking him to elaborate didn't seem worth the breath. He was obviously lying. As if this ruthless, inhumane creature with ice in his veins could feel even a flicker of affection. "Girl! You're not giving him enough credit. You got his interest." "Why refuse me?" Arnold asked. "Your engagement is broken. You're on the verge of exile, and you have no faction or supporters. At this rate, you'll be dead within a fortnight. I'd call my offer a stroke of unbelievable fortune." "You're not wrong," Risha admitted. "Once upon a time I would have jumped at your offer. If it had been made in her first life, for instance, but now Risha knew better. Her life was only just getting started, and the future held endless possibilities. After the horror of her sixth loop, she yearned for freedom. "I don't want to marry him. I won't be anyone's captive." Still, Risha more than anyone knew that the slightest adjustment could enact profound changes on the trajectory of a life. No doubt she'd have many more lives, but this could be the only one where marriage to Arnold would be an option. The dread emperor, the tyrant, the man who will stoke the fires of war. Risha knew the gossip, the endless conjecture behind Arnold Hines' bloody reign, but she didn't know the truth. Why? The question had haunted her since her first life. She'd never before had the chance to even speak to him. She had wandered it as a merchant, hearing of the distant outbreak of war. She'd wondered when the news of the dead and dying reached her apothecary, when she had comforted her terrified mistress in her life as a maid, assuring her everything would be all right. When she squared off against him in battle as he plunged a sword through her heart, even then she wondered, if I stick around, maybe I'll finally have my answer. Half of her was dying to know. The other half didn't give a damn. And yet, she recalled a childhood dream, rather a longing. Risha let out a breath. "You claim you are enamored of me. Yes, I am." This is so freaking cheesy. "I am completely under your spell. To think he would spout such nonsense with a straight face. I know. Then, will you grant me anything I desire? So, being as it is within my power," Arnold said, "anything you want will be yours." Risha hesitated, gathering her thoughts. "I have some conditions." Arnold slightly motioned for her to go on. "I want full control over the wedding festivities. Everything must be procured from merchants of my choosing." "Fine," Arnold nodded. "You're free to do business with whoever you wish. After we are married, I must be in a position to mingle with guests from abroad. That sounds within the purview of the Crown Princess. Anything else?" "I will be allowed to live in a separate residence from your mother and father." She meant this seriously, but it made Arnold laugh. "You don't seem the type to worry about an overbearing mother-in-law. You would be surprised. Combative relationships with one's new family was the most difficult part of marriage, or so they say. It could be a ramshackle cottage for all I care. It requires a secondary residence. Yeah, someplace you can escape." Actually, Risha didn't care at all about in-laws. When Arnold set his way into motion, his first motive would be the assassination of his father. A genuine coup by patricide. Not at all like Dietrich's clumsy attempt. Next, he would name himself emperor, take control of the country, and mobilize the military. Separating him from his parents would make the first step more difficult, although not impossible, unfortunately. "Anything else?" Arnold asked. "I'll do whatever it takes to marry you. Ideally, I'd like to know your endgame," Risha said with dignity, "but as I doubt there's any chance of that, I have one final request." She jabbed a finger in his face regardless of how rude it was. "I will spend my time idling around the castle. No work, no study. I shall be utterly useless. What the fuck? Let me just see how much you want me as your princess." What are you gonna do if he says yes? After a long moment of silence, Arnold cracked a merry laugh. The proposal remained, all her conditions were met. Oh boy, chapter 2. But I will have to do it in the next part, so I'll get to editing and I'll see you guys next time.